The I-404, an underwater aircraft carrier, could carry 3 planes up to 6.5 tons and float undetected to enemy borders, launching air attacks. It had enough fuel to circle the Earth with 1 refuel, staying submerged. In 1944, Japan's reveal of this technology embarrassed superpowers like the US and Germany. Achieving this in just 3 years was remarkable for a small country like Japan. Amazing. In 1944, Japan revealed this revolutionary technology to the world, which embarrassed superpowers like the US and Germany. And all of this was achieved by a country as small as Japan in just 3 years. But at that time, in terms of technology, it shook the world. And all this was achieved by a country as small as Rajasthan in just 3 years. But at that time, shook the world in terms of technology. European powers always considered Japan an outsider. But despite being an outsider, Japan developed this technology at a time when intercontinental ballistic missiles didn't even exist. Back then, if a country wanted to attack an enemy nation, there were no missiles that could be launched from Japan to directly strike Germany or the USA. But with the help of Japan's submarines, Japan could sit right there, launch a full-scale attack on nations like the US and the UK. Now, other countries didn't have aircraft carriers, they did, and Japan's aircraft carrier looked different. So, the question arises, what made Japan's undetectable? What materials lifted heavy weights and operated underwater? And surprisingly, its history is quite weird. Just a year after its introduction, Japan was defeated. What materials did they use that could lift such heavy weights and still operate underwater? Surprisingly, its history is odd. Japan was defeated soon after. The I-401 and US's Segundo submarines faced off. Japan could have destroyed the US submarine, but it didn't. Japan had the opportunity to destroy the US submarine in 1 stroke. But that didn't happen. Instead, the US seized this technology, and just a year later, they destroyed Japan's submarine, causing this technology to vanish forever. But now the question arises, why did the US choose to destroy such advanced technology instead of developing it for themselves? To find answers to all these questions, we need to go back in time a little. When the idea of this underwater aircraft submarine first came to Germany. 1940, World War. It was a time when countries were divided into 2 factions. On one side were the Central Powers, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Turkey. And on the other side were the forces, France, Great Britain, Russia, Italy, Japan, and the US. Yes, Japan and the US used to be friends back then. During the war, Germany could attack Allied forces, but the 650 kilometers English Channel hindered attacks on Britain. Germany aimed for a stealthy approach to Britain's borders. They modified submarines to carry planes. Planes alerted the British Army. Germany sought to stealthily reach Britain and launch a surprise attack. Submarines carried planes. Submarines traveled underwater, with planes above water, reaching Britain's shores quietly. The plane would launch, reducing Britain's preparation time. Germany's plan used submarines to carry planes. Submarines neared Britain with planes attached. Planes launched nearby, reducing Britain's response time. This led to the first submarine aircraft carrier. Their plan was for the submarine to go underwater and the plane attached to it would reach the shores of Britain without starting its engine. The plane would launch, and the idea of the submarine aircraft carrier was born for the first time in the world. It was a good strategy. However, during the war, this strategy did not work. And just because of such unique strategy of Germany, the idea of submarine aircraft carrier was born for the first time in the world. Now, if we look at it, it was a good strategy, but did this strategy actually work during the war? No. Both air and sea forces were active. Even if Germany reached enemy territory, planes were easily detected. Submarines lacked stealth, making them visible to radar. Germany lost World War I, and the US took control of all their assets, including the aircraft carriers. Plus, their submarines didn't have a stealth mode, which meant they could also be easily detected by the enemy's radar. And because of these reasons, unfortunately, despite this unique strategy, Germany lost World War I, and the US took control of all their assets, including the aircraft carriers. After this, US efforts began. The US was impressed by Germany's technology for creating an underwater aircraft. The US was aware of submarine flaws and surface plane risks. Plus, the US was already well aware of the flaws in submarines. He knew that if they brought the plane out while it was on the surface, it could easily come into the enemy's sight. The US made modifications. They built structures to store planes, Keeping submarines effective, underwater aircraft carriers were created for stealth attacks. Yet, one problem remained. The US covertly launched planes with these carriers. Underwater aircraft carriers had become a perfect weapon for secret stealth attacks. However, there was still one problem with them. With the help of this underwater aircraft carrier, the US was able to launch planes secretly. But when it came time for their recovery, meaning if the planes needed to land back on the submarine after an attack, that was just because the deck of the submarine kept going up and down due to floating on water. Because of that, the deck was quite unstable for plane landings. And you know what? Just because of this one small gate, major disadvantage, the US dropped the submarine idea. Germany and the US, two tech leaders, gave up. During World War II, Japan ignored their failures and invested in its own aircraft carrier technology. But then, cut directly to World War II. Suddenly, news comes that Japan, ignoring the failures of both, was investing its time in developing its own aircraft carrier technology. Now, does this mean Japan had better ideas than the US to create this technology? Or was this the dumbest decision in Japan's entire history? Well, today you know very well that Japan lost in World War II, so you might think probably it was a dumb decision. Today you know very well that Japan lost in World War II, so I think probably it was a dumb decision. But actually that's not the case at all. Germany aimed to control Europe. Japan sought dominance in Asia, but the US was involved in Asia. Total control, Asia. But the problem was that at that time, the US's involvement in Asia was increasing. So, to remove the US's involvement in the Asian region, in December 1941, Japan attacked the US's Hawaiian island, specifically Pearl Harbor, and thus began a full-fledged war between the US and Japan. After this attack, Japan was now under the threat of a US attack. But they say, best defense is always a good offense. And that's why, to avoid a US attack, and to strike first before they could attack. The Japanese Navy's Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto made a plan to build 3 secret underwater aircraft carriers, and they were designated as Class 1 400 submarines. Now, what's the most surprising thing about this? Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941. In 3 years, Japan built the I-400 submarines. How did they do it? Japan's mindset was clear. That means a small country like Japan achieved in just 3 years what big countries like the US and Germany could not do their entire lifetime. How were those allegations made? Japan's mindset was quite clear. It's not always necessary to learn everything by making mistakes yourself. Now you can learn a lot analyzing others' mistakes. Just like Japan took into account the weaknesses of German and US submarines and equipped their own submarines with modern systems, completely overcame those weaknesses. Like, for example, to protect their submarine carriers from enemies, they made 2 special modifications to them. First, they applied a coating on some submarines that can absorb all kinds of sound waves, which is why even the most advanced sonar detectors couldn't find them. Secondly, magnetic mines are usually used in war. So when a submarine comes near these mines explode after detecting the magnetic field of the marine. Japan installed demagnetizing cables in submarines to reduce magnetic fields, rendering them undetectable. The carrier could carry 3 planes. And so, because of these 2 modifications, Japan's underwater aircraft carrier became undetectable and well secured. But what made it undetectable was its unique ability, which allowed this carrier to carry 3 planes at the same time to transport these planes. This submarine had a cylinder-shaped aircraft hangar where 3 ITM-6 on-bomber aircraft could easily be accommodated. Japan designed foldable planes for stealthy underwater approaches. After folding, they could be locked in that hangar, allowing the submarine to go underwater and get close to their target before launching them. Launching these planes was also quite simple. Just like a pressure is created in a slingshot due to pulling its rubber bank, and as soon as we release that pressure, the stone kept inside it is launched. Same thing happens with these plates. These submarines create pressure with the help of the steam cylinders inside them, then release some of that pressure to launch the planes. This means Japan had created a perfect weapon that could neither be detected by anyone nor destroyed by water mines. So, natural question arises here. If Japan had such advanced submarines and an attack strategy, then what was the reason they never used the most advanced submarines in warfare? Well, friends, Japan was never able to use this technology. Two events derailed Japan. In 1942, US defeated Japan. The Japanese Navy faced another setback. Japan received its first blow in 1942 when the war between Japan and the US began at Midway Island, in which the US defeated Japan badly. And before Japan could recover from this, April of the following year, the Japanese Navy faced another setback. When the US attacked, Yamamoto, who had ordered the creation of those secret submarines and was the mastermind behind them, was also killed. Because of these two incidents, Japan's plan to build underwater submarines started to get delayed. Contrary to their original plan, only 5 out of 18 submarines received official approval, and of those, only 2 were completed and ready. Now, to attack a big country with just 2 submarines, you need courage, and that's where Japan lost. Actually, on July 25, 1945, both Japanese submarine aircraft carriers set out to attack the US naval base at Ulithi Atoll. However, before they could reach there, they received a message that their country, Japan, had already surrendered to the US. This was due to the nuclear attack on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which forced Japan to surrender. As soon as they received this message, they turned back towards Japan. But during their return, something happened that brought Japan's most advanced weapon, their underwater aircraft carrier, to the world's attention for the first time. While both submarines were returning to Japan, one of them, I-400, accidentally came into the sight of US submarines. Since the commander of I-400, Arizumi, had received a message to attack any foreign submarines on sight, they fired all their weapons at the US submarine as soon as they spotted it. In response, the US submarine did the same. Before anything could happen, Arizumi received orders from the Japanese High Command to surrender unconditionally, and the US took control of the I-400 submarine aircraft carrier. This meant that Japan's secret weapon was now revealed to the world, and the US had it in their possession. As a result, the demand for Japan's secret technology began to rise worldwide. This was a technology that even the largest and most advanced countries had failed to develop, but a small country like Japan had managed to prepare it for war in just 3 years. This is why Russia also started requesting this submarine from the US to study its technology and design. But just think about what the US must have done in this situation. Well, the US destroyed that submarine overnight, or at least that's what the US claims. From the US's perspective, that submarine was so advanced that sharing its technology with competitors could threaten their own existence. And this is exactly the reason why Japan's I-400 series was the last underwater aircraft carrier ever built. No other country or technology has been able to create one since then, and in fact, no country has even attempted to do so. Since then, no country has wanted to use an underwater aircraft carrier, and there are 3 main reasons for this. First, these submarines were 1.5 times larger than American submarines from World War II, which meant they took twice as long to surface compared to the American submarines at that time. Second, it took about 45 minutes to complete the entire process of a clean launch. That means these submarines could circle the entire Earth without being detected by any radar. A take that had cost so much money would have been totally vulnerable. These 45 minutes against attacks of elimination. The third point, in the 1960s, the US developed ICBM tech more advanced than submarines, which gave them the capability to strike any country remotely. Building these missiles was easier, and delivering them was simpler too. And compared to submarines and aircraft carriers, building these missiles was also quite easy. and delivering them was much simpler too. So, all in all, this technology, which was state-of-the-art during World War II, became increasingly relevant in the years to come. And you know what? This happens with almost every technology. After the arrival of new technology, it comes relevant. The point is, Japan, smaller than India, achieved this against superpowers. Japanese companies lead in technology. Our electronic appliances are made in Japan. In fact, Japanese companies have remained quite ahead in technology to this day. Look around your home. All the major electronic appliances we have, like TVs, refrigerators, mixers, and washing machines, are all made in Japan. If a small country can achieve all this, why can't India, the 7th largest country, do the same? We have the resources, brilliant minds, and manpower. Why can't India do it? We have resources, brilliant minds, manpower as well. Today, among the top 10 companies, 6 of the CEOs and founders are Indians. Indians hold top roles. Other nations use Indian talent. Why isn't such innovation happening in India? Why no advanced tech here? Why not use Indian products? Why isn't such advanced technology being developed? After all, why don't other countries use made in India products? I think the reason is our mindset. I think, first of all, we need to forget our colonial past because the British ruled over us. This mindset has somehow created the notion that Indians are uncivilized and lag behind in technology and innovation. Even today, made in India products are seen as inferior. We should learn from Japan's self-belief and resourcefulness. Japan focuses on creating intellectual resources, which they export. Toyota, a Japanese company, developed a water-powered engine. They may not have as many resources, but they play to their strengths, creating intellectual resources, and then they export those intellectual resources to other countries. One live example of such a revolutionary technology is Toyota, which is a Japanese company. It has shown the world by finally creating an engine that can run on water. Yes, you can believe it, a water-powered engine, a water-powered vehicle. This technology can beat all those companies, including Elon Musk's Tesla, which makes so-called eco-friendly cars. Now, what is this technology and how does it work? I've already made a detailed video on that, which you can watch by clicking here. If you like this video and learned something new from it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the Supply Science channel, and press the bell notification so you don't miss any updates on our upcoming videos. See you next time and keep learning.